It began on a rainy Thursday evening. I was driving home from work, the monotonous drone of the windshield wipers syncing with my thoughts. Seeking some background noise, I turned on the car radio, flipping through the usual stations. That's when I stumbled upon a frequency I didn't recognize, 104.6 FM. The static cleared, revealing a soft, melodic tune that felt both nostalgic and unfamiliar. A soothing voice followed, welcoming listeners to WZRD Radio, where the past comes alive. Intrigued, I listened as the station played a mix of old-timey music and peculiar stories that felt eerily personal. Over the next few days, I became obsessed with WZRD Radio. Each broadcast seemed tailored to my memories, my regrets, my fears. Friends and family claimed they couldn't find the station, dismissing it as a figment of my imagination. But I knew it was real. One night, the voice on the radio addressed me directly, recounting events from my past that I'd never shared with anyone. The line between reality and delusion blurred as I delved deeper into the mystery of the station that shouldn't exist. The days following my initial encounter with WZRD Radio were a blur. The station's broadcast became increasingly personal, delving into memories I'd long buried. Each night, the voice on the radio recounted events from my past with unsettling accuracy. I began to notice changes in my behavior. Sleep eluded me, and I found myself drawn to the radio at all hours. Friends expressed concern, but I dismissed their worries, convinced that I was on the verge of uncovering something significant. One evening, the broadcast took a darker turn. The voice described a dream I'd had the night before, one I hadn't shared with anyone. It spoke of a shadowy figure standing at the foot of my bed, whispering unintelligible words. The realization that the station knew my dreams sent a chill down my spine. Determined to understand the source of the broadcasts, I began researching WZRD Radio. There were no records of such a station existing, no licensing information, nothing. It was as if the station had materialized solely for me. I reached out to local radio enthusiasts and forums, but no one had heard of 104.6 FM. Some suggested it might be a pirate station, while others dismissed it as a hoax. Despite the lack of evidence, I couldn't shake the feeling that the station was real and that it was targeting me. Late one night, the voice on the radio issued a warning. They're coming for you. You must prepare. The broadcast ended abruptly, leaving me in a state of panic. Who were they? And why were they coming for me? The following days were filled with paranoia. I felt watch followed. Shadows seemed to move on their own, and whispers echoed in empty rooms. The line between reality and delusion blurred further as I delved deeper into the mystery of WZRD Radio. I haven't slept in 3 days. Not really. I close my eyes, sure, and time slips away, but it's not sleep. It's waiting. I lie there, listening to the low static of the radio that shouldn't be on, and the rustle of something that sometimes moves in the dark corners of my apartment. It breathes now. Not always. Just sometimes. But it's enough. A shallow, wheezing inhale that begins when the radio starts to hum. Always at 2:17 a.m. I've tried unplugging the radio, throwing it out, smashing it to pieces. But no matter what I do, it's always back on the nightstand when I wake up, tuned to 103.6 FM. That frequency doesn't exist. I even bought a new radio, something analog. No presets, no memory. I left it sealed in a box. But when I turned it on, the dial was already fixed on 103.6. And it played the same broadcast, the same haunting voice I heard the first time I tuned in. Only now the voice knows my name. It began subtly. The first night after the cemetery incident, after that thing happened at midnight with the dirt shifting and the song playing backwards, I returned home and turned on the radio again, desperate for proof. I recorded what I heard on my phone. But the next day, the audio file was gone. Deleted. No trace in my backup either. So I tried again the next night. This time, I live streamed it to a private account. I watched it play back with a friend on the call. He heard it too. That voice. The woman whispering, "Can you hear me now, Matthew? You left me there." I never told the radio my name. My friend, Chris, tried to laugh it off. He said it was a prank, maybe a pirate broadcast. He told me to sleep, but I could tell something rattled him. He signed off early. 2 hours later, I got a voicemail from his number. I don't know how he managed to send a voicemail without calling. When I played it, I heard something faint, breathing, and a voice, faint, cracked, like it was whispering from inside a damp crawl space. "You're next." The timestamp said 2:17 a.m. I started documenting everything. Each night, the voice became more detailed. It spoke in fragments, but the tone was always intimate, personal, like it was remembering something I didn't. Night 1, he never closed the door. I watched from the hallway. Night 2, you lied about the river. You left her there. Night 3, the trees didn't forget. They still remember her breath in the water. Night 4, your brother begged you not to go inside. He screamed until the door shut. I don't have a brother. At least I don't think I do. The voice isn't always female now. Sometimes it shifts. There's a second speaker, something more guttural, rasping, like its vocal cords were torn out. It doesn't speak English. It mutters in a broken cadence that makes my skin crawl. And sometimes, I see it. Just before I fall asleep, I catch a glimpse of a figure in the reflection of the TV screen, or the microwave door, or the blackened glass of the unplugged monitor. Always the same height, same tilt of the head, watching, like it's listening too. I started scouring forums, darknet radio hacker groups, ham radio enthusiasts, ghost hunter boards. Nobody had heard of 103.6. But one user, Red Tower Sleeps, reached out with a private message. "You're not the first. If you're seeing reflections, get out. They come through when you start answering back. Don't talk to the voice. Don't talk to the voice." The account was deleted 10 minutes later. The message had included a strange file, an audio snippet titled deadfreck.wave. I hesitated, but curiosity won. I played it through headphones. Big mistake. It wasn't a broadcast. It was a low, rhythmic thumping, like flesh being pounded from the inside of a wall. Then the voice came in. Not like before, this was clearer. Closer. Right behind me. "I know where you sleep, Matt. And you've been listening too long." I tore the headphones off. My ears wouldn't stop ringing. And then the mirror cracked. Not shattered, just a clean, deliberate fissure down the middle, as if something on the other side had smiled too hard. Last night, I heard a knock. Not on my front door. At the wall. I live on the top floor of an old brick building. The adjacent unit has been empty for 3 months. No tenants. I checked with the landlord myself. But at 3:12 a.m., I heard soft, polite knocking from the bedroom wall. Then 3 whispered words. "Let me out." The voice was directly behind the drywall. I didn't move. Couldn't. My limbs were locked in place. But something crawled beneath the floorboards, soft, sliding movements. like hands pressing up from beneath, patting, exploring. And then the radio turned on by itself. Volume cranked. Feedback screamed. Then silence. Then the voice, now full of teeth and static. You already did. This morning, there was a letter on my kitchen table. No return address. Sealed with what looked like candle wax. Inside, the letter was handwritten in a rushed, childlike scrawl. It read, "Dear Matt, you said we could come back when it was safe. You said the station wouldn't hurt us. But I heard them screaming through the walls. I saw what it did to your eyes. I don't want to go back inside. Please don't make me go back. I don't know who M is. I don't remember writing this. But it was on my stationery. My handwriting. My ink pen. There was one final line at the bottom, different handwriting. You never left the station. I haven't turned the radio on in 2 days. Doesn't matter. Now, I hear it through the vents, through the hum of my refrigerator. Even the ticking of the stove clock mimics the static's rhythm. Something is broadcasting through me. I blacked out yesterday. Came to at 3:33 p.m., standing in the middle of my apartment, holding the unplugged radio with the antenna extended. The knob was turning on its own. I recorded it again, and this time I heard something new, a different voice, someone pleading, crying, trapped. It was my voice, begging for help from inside the static. The days following the last broadcast were a blur. The voice on the radio had become more insistent, more invasive. It no longer waited for me to tune in. It found me in the silence, in the hum of the refrigerator, in the static between television channels. It was always there, whispering, beckoning. I began to see things. Shadows that moved against the grain of light, reflections that didn't match my movements, faces in the windows that vanished when I turned to look. Sleep became a distant memory, replaced by a constant state of hyper-awareness and dread. Desperate for answers, I revisited the abandoned radio station. The building stood as it always had, decrepit and forgotten. But inside, things had changed. The equipment, once covered in dust and cobwebs, was now pristine, humming with energy. The air was thick with the scent of ozone and something else, something metallic and decaying. As I stepped into the control room, the door slammed shut behind me. The lights flickered and the equipment sprang to life. The voice returned, louder and clearer than ever. It spoke of things I had never told anyone, secrets buried deep within my psyche. It accused, it mocked, it pleaded. I tried to leave, but the door wouldn't budge. The walls seemed to close in, the room shrinking with each passing second. The voice crescendoed into a cacophony of screams and static, overwhelming my senses. Then silence. I awoke outside the station, the morning sun casting long shadows across the landscape. The building was gone, replaced by an empty lot. No one remembered the station ever existing. But the voice remained. The days following my last visit to the station were a blur. The voice on the radio had become more insistent, more invasive. It no longer waited for me to tune in. It found me in the silence, in the hum of the refrigerator, in the static between television channels. It was always there, whispering, beckoning. I began to see things. Shadows that moved against the grain of light, reflections that didn't match my movements, faces in the windows that vanished when I turned to look. Sleep became a distant memory, replaced by a constant state of hyper-awareness and dread. Desperate for answers, I revisited the abandoned radio station. The building stood as it always had, decrepit and forgotten. But inside, things had changed. The equipment, once covered in dust and cobwebs, was now pristine, humming with energy. The air was thick with the scent of ozone and something else, something metallic and decaying. As I stepped into the control room, the door slammed shut behind me. The lights flickered and the equipment sprang to life. The voice returned, louder and clearer than ever. It spoke of things I had never told anyone, secrets buried deep within my psyche. It accused, it mocked, it pleaded. I tried to leave, but the door wouldn't budge. The walls seemed to close in, the room shrinking with each passing second. The voice crescendoed into a cacophony of screams and static, overwhelming my senses. Then silence. I awoke outside the station, the morning sun casting long shadows across the landscape. The building was gone, replaced by an empty lot. No one remembered the station ever existing. But the voice remained. It no longer needed the radio to reach me. It was in the rustling of leaves, the creaking of floorboards, the whisper of the wind. It was a constant presence, a reminder of the truths I had uncovered and the ones I had yet to face. I realized that the station was never a place, but a state of being, a manifestation of guilt, regret, and the secrets we bury. It was a mirror reflecting the darkest parts of the soul, forcing one to confront the horrors within. Now, I live in perpetual silence, not the absence of sound, but the presence of something deeper, more profound. A silence that speaks volumes, that echoes the truths we fear to acknowledge. And in that silence, the station continues to broadcast, not through airwaves, but through the very fabric of reality, reaching those who, like me, have tuned in too deeply.